This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast. With Stuart Cameron and Dale Clancy.
Hello and welcome to the 8th edition of the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast, and at this stage we still have 4 teams from the 50 clubs playing National Rugby who are unbeaten, namely Ayr in National 1, Allan, Glen and Orkney in National 3 and Garnock from National 4, who themselves are the only side with a 100% record including try bonuses, so well done to them. Joining me as always is Dale Clancy, and while it was a reduced fixture card last week as it was a designated standby date for Nationals 2, 3 and 4, some games were played in those divisions due to the previous week's call-offs because of the bad weather. But we're going to start, as always, with the Premiership and the results from Saturday. And we'll start in alphabetical order with Glasgow Hawks 57, Jed Forest 19. Jed still having a bit of a nightmare season due to their huge injury list, but valuable points for Hawks, who picked up their second win of the season.
Yeah, I think, we were speaking about it last week, about Jed Forest, and we all know how difficult a campaign that they've had, and we can't keep repeating the same things, so it was always going to be difficult to go away from home and try and pick up some points. But we did speak about how important it was to try and get something. Unfortunately for Jed, they weren't able to pick up anything, but Glasgow Hawks have been able to get that victory. We heard on the programme last week there was the conversation about not being where they wanted to be. Other teams had stolen a march on them, and it's the Hawks are playing catch up, but a great performance, good win, got a lot of scores on the board as well. So from a Glasgow Hawks point of view, it was a good return.
Hoyt 27, Musselburgh 25. Musselburgh went to Mansfield Park unbeaten against the other three Borders teams with the aim of getting the clean sweep, and they nearly pulled it off. 20-10 up at one stage and a 4-try bonus in the bag as well. Hoyt missing some regulars, it has to be said, but a good result for Musselburgh, and they'll be disappointed that they only got 2 from it. Yeah,
I think it's probably a good result for both teams, because Hoyt have been a really strong, good reaction after that defeat against Mar, and obviously defeating Curry as well. And it was probably a game that on paper you look at and you think there's a bit of a gulf between the two sides, but Musselburgh competing really, really well throughout the whole game. Likes of Ali Weir coming back for Hoyt at fly half.
Yeah, I didn't see that happening.
Neither did I. It's putting me to shame because I'm the same age as him, so I'm sitting here doubling in size, and he's looking very lean and in shape and slotting back into first team rugby, and it just shows you the success that Hoyt have had. It's bringing players back as well, and that's what happens if you create a good culture at any club. People want to get involved, and Ali Weir's went back in and got himself involved with Hoyt. But ultimately it's another win for Hoyt, and especially with the way that the results went at the weekend, it's certainly keeping them in the hunt.
And we don't mention him that often, and we should do more. I think Kirk Ford at fullback, Mr. Reliable with the boot.
Yeah, I think Kirk Ford is, it's true what you say. We don't mention him too much, but he is an unsung hero in that team. He's really steady. He's so laid back, and when you watch him play, he looks unflappable. He looks like he's never going to be rattled, or he creates time for himself. He kicks accurately off the tee and from the hand. And the good balance that Hoyt have, because when you've got the likes of Kirk Ford in there, Kirk Ford, and you've got Kyle Brunton at 10, you've got 2 players that can pretty much play first receiver as well, and they use a lot of Sean Muir as well, at first receiver and some of their forwards, so they've got quite a well-skilled, team throughout from 1 to 15, but Kirk Ford gives them a good bit of balance and, a bit of calmness behind, which you need, especially at Premiership, because the tactical battle and trying to kick for territory and possession, you need somebody behind there that, is going to be steady under the high ball, but also is going to be able to make the right decisions.
And that'll do Musselburgh the world of good as well, won't it? I mean, their only really big issue this season so far was losing at home to Curry by quite a considerable margin. But as we've said earlier, they drew with Kelso, they've beaten Selkirk away, beaten Jed Forest as well, at Jed Forest.
Yeah, you think about those results and perhaps, this is earlier in the season, these big score lines you can perhaps kind of gloss over because it's still teams settling in and taking a bit of time. As we've said, the league is certainly settling out, and from a Musselburgh point of view, it's settling out in a really favourable position. They're in the top half of the league. They're able to start to mount a little bit of pressure towards the teams above them, because I've said before, Mar, Curry and Hoyt are the 3 standout teams in that division. Okay, so they're nailed on, I would say, for the top 3 places. The way that Edinburgh Accies have been playing, they were my 4th, and I just, they obviously, we'll come on to it shortly, obviously not a great weekend for them, but they're then giving this fourth place up for grabs, because Musselburgh are playing really well, getting results. Heriots are getting results, and then Brackies need to start chasing and chasing down the teams ahead of them. Musselburgh have had a great start to the season, especially off the back of what they were playing like last year.
Well, let's come to that Enbrackies one. That's next on the list. Kelso 32, Enbrackies 22. Second time this season that Kelso have bounced back from big defeats, and as you mentioned, it was against Mar and it was against Hawick. They still got Curry to play next week, but we'll be talking about that very shortly. But to actually bounce back from huge defeats and get points, they were 22-10 down against Enbrackies. Came back with a try bonus to win comfortably.
Yeah, and I think that's it's almost the kind of yin and yang from the Selkirk game. They were in control of that game and then almost threw it away slightly. They got themselves in a good position to see the game out, not able to see it through. But in this game here, they've been able to react and come back and get a really handsome victory, which we've always said Kelso at Poynter Park, any team in the Premiership to be fair, but Kelso at Poynter Park are difficult to play. They were difficult to play in that one last year. They were difficult to play in the Border League as well, in the double-headed fixtures as well, that they were able to, put in some good performances over the last few years, and into the Premiership they've been able to continue that form. They've been houked by Hawick, but apart from that they've been involved in a lot of really interesting, intriguing games, and Kelso will be happy because last week you heard Neil speaking about the fact that they're not where they wanted to be. They've obviously set targets and it was about getting results now, and last weekend they managed to get the result, and it's a huge one for them.
And very hard to bounce back from big defeats like that. So I mean, mentally they're in the right place.
Yeah, totally, because after you're defeated by a team in the same division as you, and it's either a last minute defeat or if it's a heavy margin of defeat, your confidence is low, and to get that's plaudits to the coaching staff and the culture they've got at Kelso, because to be able to galvanise your squad again and go again the next weekend in a positive mindset and turn it around from being behind, that shows great character from the Kelso squad, because it's new territory for most of them in that team. Not a lot of them have played Premiership rugby. Some of them have got oodles of experience at Premiership rugby, but they start to then build this experience, and that's another great one for the guys from Poynter.
Mar 34, Curry 28, that was the big game, the top end of the table in the Premiership. A big win for Mar, who have now beaten Hawick and Curry at home. They've obviously got to travel and meet them again, which could be a different story. We will find out later in the season. Sets it up nicely though, and a valuable late try for Curry because that gave them 2 bonus points.
Yeah, I think it's going to be vital to pick up as many points as you can in the league, because as you know, obviously it culminates in a playoff system at the end of the season. So I think it's important what you say there. Firstly, actually, the game, Mar Curry, it was a huge game. It swung away. Curry, had control of that game from what I was listening to in the coverage from Robin and Andrew as well. Curry looked like they were in control, and there was almost just a shift. Mar took the bull by the horns and went for it, got a couple of scores, perhaps a couple of decisions in there which irked them as well, and it was like Vicano with a huge challenge that could have potentially ended up in a different colour of card, but it seemed to galvanise Mar and got themselves in a great position. So, but as you say, it's 2 wins at home for Mar. Difficult place to go, but it's 2 wins at home. When they get to the turn in this campaign, it's now going to show what kind of character they've got if they can travel away and go to Millennium and go to Mansfield and pick up those wins, because they're going to end up being the results which will decide who's going to get the home playoffs.
Selkirk 13, Heriots Blues 26, and that win puts Heriots Blues into third place with, surprisingly, just a +9 points difference.
Yeah, I think, you look at last season, and potentially Heriots and Musselburgh have changed places with Hawks and Selkirk, really. Selkirk almost making it into that 4th place. Hawks were there and thereabouts for most of the season. I think they had pretty much that game at Mansfield pretty much took them away from the playoffs, I felt, last year. But then you look this year and you've got Musselburgh, who are riding high, Heriots, who are now in the playoff zone. We've got a long way to go, but they've had a great start to the season and in that playoff zone, and they'll be looking to try and maintain that. And it's amazing what wins and confidence can do for a club. So it has been a bit of a shift in terms of those 2 teams, or those 4 teams almost trading places. But it'll be interesting to see if Heriots can sustain that. I think the team that they've got, when you're looking at it on social media when it's coming through, it is strong. They have benefited from a lot of players that are playing Super Series and covering as well and coming back into the team. And, it's a competitive environment, I think, at Golden Acre just now. And I looked at it the other week, and they had first, seconds, thirds women's team out, and they're absolutely thriving at Golden Acre. So, to back that up with good results on the pitch as well is a testament to the club.
Now, without looking at the league table, only 2 clubs have 6 try bonus points. Which two?
Good question. Which two? Musselburgh
is correct.
And I'm going to say I'm going to say Heriots.
Yeah.
Is it?
Absolutely
well done.
right.
Oh, brilliant.
Spot on. Well done. You didn't even look.
No, I didn't actually. Yeah, I didn't.
That's very, very impressive, but surprising.
It is surprising,
really.
But I think over the last few weeks we have been speaking about, how many tries they have been scoring, and they've been able to turn that tide. I think last year they were they were getting defeated heavily, and it was their point accumulation that was perhaps seen, obviously in rugby, but their point accumulation was seeing them come off second best on most occasions. They've turned that, and I just think their squads. I've not looked too much at Musselburgh, I must add. I've seen the results coming through, and I need to look at it a little bit more closely in terms of their change from last year. But Heriots do have a stronger squad when you look at it, and I think that players are really benefiting from the success of their Super Series club. And I think Super Series has been something which some people like, some people don't, but I think it's helped club rugby. It's evened stuff out for a few years, but those players in time are thriving from being in a more competitive environment. And that was a club towards the foot of the Premiership. They've been in the National Division, so they were at the foot of the Premiership, and they're then in a better competitive environment, and it's improving their players. It obviously is.
And Musselburgh last season, of course, did score a lot of tries in the early part of the season in particular. So Musselburgh didn't surprise me so much. The fact that Heriots Blues are on there with a plus 9 points difference was the one that surprised me. But let's have a look at the league table then. So Mar at the top with 30 points. That's played 7, won 6. Hoyk in second with 27. Heriots Blues in third, 25. Curry, who have played one game less, in fourth position on 22. Musselburgh in fifth on 21. Edinburgh's in sixth with 19, Kelso in seventh on 16, Glasgow Hawks 8th place 13 points, Selkirk 9th with 11, and Jed Forest at the bottom with just 2 try bonus points. So Curry and Hawks game in hand, Jed 9 points adrift. Our live commentary game this Saturday is Jed Forest against Mars, so we'll no doubt be finding out a little bit more on how soon they're expecting players to return, and we all know if they get their best team on the park, then they could start picking up wins, but they need to get them back.
Yeah, I do think it's going to take a lot to turn the tide. It's a competitive league. There's no easy games in this league, and we've seen it already this season. But Jed Forest, I think, even welcoming some players back, it's going to take a lot, especially with Mar at home. I remember covering a game at Riverside. It was Mar, Jed, and Mar blew them away.
That was Shedden on the way, scoring 4 tries.
Jamie Shedden, who's now playing for Ayrshire Bulls and doing really well. So he's a really good player, don't get me wrong, but Mar's squad now is still equally as strong, and Jed are perhaps a little bit weaker. And I just do think players like Gregor Law, who's an important player for Jed, that they perhaps can't call on him just now, and it's a shame. And just the inconsistencies in the squad, moving players into scrum half and then not having the same half-back partnership, maybe not the same centres, different back row, different front row. We have said it though, it's going to benefit the young players coming through to play Premiership, play in this environment, but it's been a difficult start to the campaign, and it's difficult to try and encourage players back as well. But hopefully we see some of Jed's best players back on the pitch and contributing for the rest of the season, but it's going to take a lot to be competitive.
Jed Forest and Mar, though, it's always been one of those fixtures. I mean, back in the National One days as well, the two of them going head to head. A lot of clashes on and off the field over the years as well, but always very competitive and a great occasion.
Yeah, it's always been competitive. I think I've seen a few reels of fights after games and what have you, but that's rugby, and it's great with rugby as well, because you see that on the pitch, and then all of a sudden, they're in the bar having a drink, or they're all chatting after a game, and it's good. It's so obviously sometimes quite unsavoury to see in the park if there's something a little bit too far, but a lot of the times it's done in the heat of the battle and the frustration. I just think that on a rugby level just now, the two teams are poles apart. The league dictates that as well. It shows how far they are apart, and it'll be interesting to see the squad when it comes out.
We'll be talking about that one in a second in more detail, but this week a full programme expected, and we'll start with Curry against Kelso, and we're going to hear from Kelso Director of Rugby, Neil Hinnigan.
Trip on Saturday to Maloney Park to play Curry, which will be a difficult task. Obviously they're going well, and just missed out away to Mar last week, so they like to play fast, and they play a good offloading game, so we're going to have to be defensively well organised, and that's what we've been working on mainly this week, is trying to to keep that up, because it paid dividends last week against Accies. We managed to stay in the game this time for long enough to have an opportunity to come back at Accies, and from 22-10 down to winning the game 32-22 in the end was very pleasing. So yeah, it was a good result, good 5 points. But moving on to Curry, it was a bruising encounter last week, so there's a lot of players dropping out. Murray Woodcock drops out, Terry Logan drops out, Hamish Tweedy is out as well, Liam Tate incoming is Angus Utterson comes in for Hamish. He's looking at his first Premiership game, so hopefully he gets a run off the bench. James Glendinning comes in to the back row. Grant Shields comes back onto the bench. Angus McGregor keeps his place at loosehead, so that's a credit to him after his performance last week. Allan Frame starts at hooker and Hugh Knox goes to the bench. Quite a lot of changes in there, obviously, so the injury list's getting fairly big, but we've also got to look ahead. After Curry we have Jed, Forest and Musselburgh at home, so they're going to be two big games for us, and it's just about trying to manage the squad through this period of time that's going to be obviously very important to our season. So it's not an easy one, and it's a hard match for us away to Curry, there's no doubt about it. But as I say, the young youthful team we're taking and some of the older heads, it's a good mixture, and I'm sure we can give a good account of ourselves.
Neil Hennigan. Well, Kelso not fared too well so far against Huikenmark. As we mentioned, Curry will be a big test for them, although Curry have lost their last couple of games, but they're back at home.
Yeah, I think they'll be happy to get back at home. Not one in 3 games essentially, 1 postponed, 2 defeats. So yeah, home comforts will suit Curry in this game. Let's not beat around the bush. On paper, Curry, who have been competing at the top level of the Premiership for the last few years, are stronger than Kelso, but I do expect it to be a tighter game. I don't expect it to be one of those games where Curry are at home and they win by 50 points. I think Kelso have started to settle into life in the Premiership, and they'll be well directed, they'll be well guided. You can hear Neil there in terms of the task at hand, speaking about the fact that they know it's going to be a difficult game, but they'll go well drilled, well coached, and they'll go in with a game plan and want to frustrate Curry. Like, Curry are going to be attritional, they're going to be hard up front, but Kelso equally, have got a really good pack and some good players in behind the scrum as well. So it'll be intriguing, but you would also probably nod to Curry starting that one as favourites.
Hawick versus Heriots Blues. Great history between the two clubs, of course, and the Blues doing okay at the moment in third place with 4 wins. Here are the thoughts of Hawick head coach Matty Douglas.
Yeah, look, we're really excited to get back into action this weekend against Heriots. Coming back off the back of a win last week. Look, I'd probably be lying if I said that the performance was where it needed to be. First half, we just struggled to match Musselburgh. Credit to Musselburgh, they had a clear game plan, and we just didn't match them. And they played some decent rugby at times. And going down the tunnel, 20 points to 10 down. We haven't been in that situation since the Mar game, and we had some stern words at half time. The players knew that it wasn't where it needed to be, and second half, credit to them, we've came out and reacted, and I thought we got back into the game well and managed it. Look, I could make excuses that we had 5 or 6 players missing, and having Dan starting at hooker, let alone first game for Hawick, but first game in the Premiership. So look, we just weren't at the races at times, and that's been the challenge this week, is to just rectify a few little things and get excited for this weekend. We're at home again. I feel that we've got a little bit of a bit of performance to put in front of the home crowd, as last week we didn't do that. So Heriots are a quality side. They're sitting at 2 points below us in third. So look, this is a top of the table clash. However you look at it, we need to win on Saturday. We need to keep the pressure on at the top. Heriots have won at Selkirk last week and won some big games this season. So look, they'll be confident after winning on the road for the first time last week. So we need to be ready for it. Looking at selection wise, there's another 5 or 6 players who come back into that selection meeting this week. So we'll be looking at it, and we'll be looking to put the strongest team on the park that we can, and try and rectify a few of the issues that we didn't quite get right last week. But again, it's always the following week you get a chance to put things right, and we'll certainly be looking to do that at Mansfield.
Matty Douglas, likely to be a much stronger Hoyt team this week, which should make the difference, but Heriot's Blues, as we said, going well?
Yeah, going really well. I think you can only go off what you see in the previous performance, and it's like the old coach's adage is you're only as good as your last game, and Hoyt were good enough to get the victory, perhaps not as polished as everybody's expected them to be, but they managed to get the victory, and that's what's happened at Hoyt last season. That was built off their success, tight games that they were able to get out the other end with a victory. So this could be another interesting game. Heriots have been scoring tries. They'll look to stretch Hoyt and get their big pack moving about the pitch. So they've obviously got that in their arsenal to try and frustrate and upset Hoyt. I just think about, obviously off the back of that Musselburgh performance, and not so much the performance but the result, we were alluding to it last week, and I said quite frank that I would expect them to come out the other end with about 15 points, and I wouldn't be surprised. How tight that game was, it's going to be interesting to see how this game goes, because we've got to think about the end of the season after the turn. 3 games all the way from home, Musselburgh, Heriots, and then a border derby against Selkirk at Philippock. So, that's a difficult end to the season for Hoyt. So it's probably paramount that they pick up full points at least from this game.
And so Jed Forest against Mar, top versus bottom at Riverside Park. Already 28 points between the two sides, and some great battles between the two over the years, as we mentioned. Mar obviously will start favourites, but let's listen in on what both coaches have to say about the match, starting with Jed's David Grieve and then Kenny Diffenthal from Mar.
On Saturday, we were up at Glasgow Hawks, and not for the first time this season, we were late call-offs, which it's really putting us on the back foot before the game's even started. It's far from ideal. The game itself, first 20-25 minutes, really competitive. Then kind of after that, the Hawks got 2 tries before half-time. But even at half-time, all the talk was positive. We felt we had a lot to play for still. But unfortunately, second half, the floodgates opened. We weren't at the races at all. It was a really disappointing afternoon for us. Again, we picked up a couple injuries. It's far from ideal, the situation we're in at the moment. We just kind of have to get on with it. This week we've got Mar at home. Hopefully there'll be 2 or 3 boys back for injury for us, especially in the backs. But again, you have to kind of wait and see. This just not having a settled squad this season's really affecting us. We know about working things at training. It's just, if it wasn't for bad luck, we'd have no luck at all. That's kind of how we feel. But we just have to go out there. We've got nothing to lose. Have a go and just kind of see what happens.
This last weekend against Curry was a tough game. Boys played really well. Really happy with the result and how the boys showed character in the second half. And then finishing off the game with a really good defensive set to keep them out, which is very happy to see that. This week versus Jed will be very tough. We are under no illusions what a battle it's going to be. We've had a few battles over the years and we're expecting nothing less this weekend. It's a tough place to go and play rugby, so we need full focus and commitment this weekend.
Kenny Diffenthal. Before that, it was David Grieve of the coaching staff at Jed Forest. Home advantage for Jed, of course, which they'll enjoy, but Mar will see this certainly as a big chance to get another 5 points in the bag against the bottom team.
Yeah, I think they will. It's difficult because as I said before, I don't want to potentially kick a team when they're down, because they've had a really difficult start to the season. But you've got to look at it what it is, and Mar are going into this game with good form, some good results that they've had so far this season, especially off the back of a really tough win against one of their nearest rivals in the league for, they want to get their second Premiership crown. So, that's realistic. Jed are struggling to survive in this division at the moment. So, they'll be hoping to try and pick up something at home. We have said home form counts, and at the moment, Jed just haven't been able to make that count at all. So, it's going to be a difficult weekend, I think. You look at it and you've got to say that Mar start that as real heavy favourites, because Hoyt went there and put on a sizable victory in some challenging conditions. So, I don't doubt that Jed will, put in a good performance and try again and try and really put in a good shift to get something from the game. But it's going to be an uphill battle in that 80 minutes.
Musselburgh against Glasgow Hawks, that's 5th against 8th. Hawks yet to win away from home this season. Musselburgh with 3 wins and a draw. And here's Hawks head coach Andy Hill.
Firstly, we've got to be happy with the win v Jed at the weekend. You know, at the end of the day, it was a bottom of the table clash, which we've come out the better side of quite convincingly. And we have to realise that if we've got aspirations of being where we want to be, this is the teams that we need to go away and look to try and be beaten. So it was good to obviously get that result, and it's tough for Jed at the moment because we've been in that situation where, you know, you're getting guys back fit and then losing more. The first year we were in the Premiership, it was our most difficult year, and so we've got to obviously feel a wee bit sorry for them. But anyway, we have to move on to next week, and we have to try and look at starting obviously moving ourselves up the table, as I say, if we've got aspirations of where we want to be at this halfway point, and looking to try and string together a few results, because in this league, you know, MD can beat anybody in the day, but it's about consistency and it's about backing up these wins to try and get 2-3 in the trot, and that's where the likes of Curry and Marr and Hoyt the last few years have just been really consistent at doing that and being able to back up these results. So that's what we need to start looking to try and do over the course of this week and moving forward. I feel as if we are in a pretty good position just now. I feel as if the cancellation v Curry actually helped us in terms of, even though when we thought the game was going to be on the Saturday, it allowed us to try and implement some bit of shape. It might allow us to kind of really forget about the Kelso victory. It was a bit of Kelso loss. It was a bit of a hangover from, and it allowed us to then go away and work on some of the things that we think will make a difference to us across the course of the campaign. So going away and work on a bit of defence and attack, the shape that we feel that we want to try and implement, the stuff that we'd put in the pre-season. But as ever with Hawks, we've got a lot of new guys coming in, which makes things quite challenging. So some of those guys are in key positions, and that's allowed them to come, get up to speed what we're trying to do as a team and as a squad. Another thing about the cancellation is probably the most difficult part of being a club where so many new guys come in, is that it actually allowed the boys to get together on the Saturday night to go away, watch Scotland play Ireland, and a lot of Irish boys in our team as well, have a beer together, enjoy each other's company, and then all of a sudden become really part of a squad, because that's where, the likes, these kind of towns that we play against from the borders, or, communities like Ma and this weekend Musselburgh, that's where we would love to be in their position, whereby you've got a core group of 20, 30 players that are there every single year that you can just build round about, and you know what you're getting in, and you can start to add to game plan, whereas we're trying to refresh things and go over things every single year. So that's obviously been the criticism for us, from the likes of Musselburgh in the past. We're a bit of an academy side, we get all the better players, but we'd love to be in their position of having the chance to go away and build on those things. And I felt as if that weekend off Curry allowed us to go away and do that as a squad. I feel as if when we're looking towards this game, there's that, Musselburgh are playing really, really well. They're playing a real identity. They're a real physical side when you watch them. They actually look quite similar to the way that in which Marr play, but really quite a physical side. You've got the kind of Watt brothers there that are doing really well in the backs, that are giving some front football, and then you've got the likes of Michael Badenhorst and the likes coming around the corner to try and get themselves back over the gain line and just build pressure, and that's what we need to be prepared for over the weekend, to try and match that physical aspect of the game, which we normally pride ourselves on, and we've been trying to make sure we get back to our best of that. I still think we're a wee bit off, but that's one of the things we've been working on and in training as well. And I think it's going to be really important looking at the weather forecast for this weekend, where it's due to be an absolute monster, a downpour across, from Thursday to Saturday. So we're well aware that that's going to impact obviously the type of rugby that's going to be allowed to be played, and that's what we need to try and focus on. Feels as if we're quite settled at the moment. Unfortunately, Paul Cairn crosses out after picking up a head knock. Good news is he's kind of passed the SCAT test, so he will hopefully be looking to be back for next weekend. And then the other one is Harry Proven is away on holiday after impressing a kid out of school doing so well. I'm sure he's going to be in Scotland under-20s radars already, because he comes with a real good pedigree as well. However, as a squad, we're getting. But I feel as if we're close to having almost everybody fit, which has been so uncharacteristic of us at this point in the year. We've got Sam Graham back this week. We don't think Wayne Burrows is going to make it, but he'll probably be fit for next week. And then the only other guys that are left injured are guys that look as if they're going to be long term, in the likes of Liam Brims, Matthew Stuart, and Murray Oliver, and Tom McTeer, who's just waiting on an operation. So it feels as if we're in a good spot, but this is going to be a massive challenge for us to go away and try and back up wins against each other at Stony Hill. Musselburgh are going to look to try and keep pushing on up that league.
Andy Hill of Glasgow Hawks. Now, Musselburgh would be certainly buoyed by their 2 points and almost a win at Mansfield Park last weekend, while Hawks, racking up the tries last weekend, will have plenty of confidence.
Yeah, this is a really interesting fixture because I think that fourth place has just been blown right open. I had a nailed on top four. Those top three could have been in any place, and then I thought Edinburgh Accies would sneak fourth, but now it has been, with the form of all the teams, it's been blown open, so that makes this game huge because Musselburgh have started tremendously. Even you think about their character in a game that they should never have won at Philiphaugh, were able to sneak away with a victory. And it's a marathon, you've got to put points on the board, and Musselburgh have put on a good tally so far. Hawks, on the other hand, Andy Hill last week was known that he's given every other team a head start. I think they realistically still think they can get in that top four. You can't bet against them because there's not a lot separating those teams towards that fourth position. There's going to be some defeats for those clubs on the road to the 18th game of the season as well. So this is going to be a really interesting one because I think that one of the other teams can steal a march on the other. There's a race to the top four now. I think the three teams are probably nailed on, so that's going to be quite boring for everybody. But the three teams at the top are going to be nailed on. But it's going to be interesting that you can see getting that fourth position because it can be any one of four teams.
And Musselburgh almost like the same place that Jed Forest were at this stage last season. They were kind of comfortable. They were out of the relegation zone. They could relax a bit more and enjoy their rugby. And I think the same's really happening now with Musselburgh because they've earned the right to be in that position.
There is going to almost be, I would say, 4 leagues, like little mini leagues in this division. There's going to be the top 3 battling out to see who can get their home semis. There's going to be the race for the top 4, and then there's going to be a little clutch of teams that at some point this season are going to realise they've just got to play games to see the season out. And unfortunately, as cruel as it sounds, I do think if Jed don't start picking up wins, they'll be in a league of their own. They'll be towards the foot of the table, and it's going to take a monumental effort to get out of it. I don't say that with any pleasure at all. I do not want to see that. I want to see a competitive league and get them getting back up as well. But, on the balance of things so far, that's what we could almost be looking at. So, from a Musselburgh point of view, they've played themselves in a really good position, and it'll be about maintaining that continuity and making sure that they can continue to pick up results to make their matches meaningful and press to be in towards that second little league in that division is going for that top 4.
It's going to be interesting anyway because obviously we're going to be there, Jed Forest against Mar, and we'll be able to hear a bit more, I think, in depth of how things are rolling at Jed and when they're going to get the players back and all that kind of stuff. And hopefully they've got a positive 2/3 of the season to go.
It's never good to see a club struggle, especially at the top flight in the top division.
But someone's got to go down.
Yes, and that's the difficulty. And especially in these 10-team leagues, the Premiership's been one down for a while, but one club has to go down. And I think you're going to see a lot of settling throughout the whole landscape of the national leagues over the next few years because it's difficult to go up and it's difficult to go down because there's only one up, one down. So, if you do find yourself cut adrift, Jed Forest might then have to start to take stock and prepare for a season down next year. We've got a long way to go, don't get me wrong. There's not a huge gulf between them yet. But if it keeps going the way it has gone and we get to the turn and they're not in touching distance, then you can only see one outcome. But yeah, I don't say it with any great delight because I've got a lot of respect for Jed. I've got a lot of respect for clubs that volunteer and serve their community so well. I think rugby clubs are the best place for young individuals to learn a lot of lessons. I certainly did. And I think it's a place where, youngsters can thrive. There's just not enough of them coming through the doors at the moment. And hopefully, the way that's been going on the pitch this season for a club like Jed Forest, it's not something that then kind of permeates through the rest of their club, and I'm sure it doesn't because they've got a great history.
OK, Selkirk against Edinburgh Accies. Back at home again for Selkirk this weekend against an Accies team who'll be hurting from throwing away a 12-point lead at Kelso last week, both trying to get back to winning ways. Here's Selkirk boss Sesh Henderson.
We're looking forward to this week's game. Edinburgh Accies at home, got another home game. We're desperate to put a performance in and get over the line and get another win. Last week we had opportunities and we're disappointed we never took them. A few injuries early doors didn't help their structures, but however, we worked hard to get back into the game, and we could have got something out of it, and we should have done. Fair play to Heriots, they took their chances and they got over the line, and we worked really hard for 80 minutes and disappointed we never got anything out of it. But this week, Edinburgh has been a tough game. They'll be hurting after getting beat at Kelso last week, and we need to go out there and really show real determination and intent to attack and our defence. And
and take opportunities when they come, and stop them from having opportunities. Keep our discipline, and we would expect to put that performance in and get over the line, get another win, which will, hopefully will restart our season again. We're getting so close, but we're just not getting any rewards for hard work. We're looking to put in that kind of hard work again this Saturday against Accies and see what happens. But we're still working hard. The boys are working hard. They're still really keen, buzzing for Saturday. And we want to try and get a home win. We're getting good crowds along, and they deserve it. So looking forward to it, and let's see what happens.
Sesh Henderson, well, one of those matches that's hard to predict. Selkirk beat Kelso at Poynter Park recently, whilst Accies couldn't do that.
Yeah, this is a game that you've got to say that Edinburgh Accies must win. Away from home, they need to bounce back and pick up a victory to try and get back in touch with that top 4 race, because another defeat, if you get into 8 games and you've lost 5, it's not been a great start to the season. And again, I'm saying this about Selkirk, and I'll get slated for it as well, but I don't realistically see Selkirk being in that position to get into the top 4. They're potentially going to be in that little league at the bottom come a point in a few games' time where they are playing games for developing for next year, or just playing them for club, and just to obviously contribute to what they're meant to be doing as clubs in a Premiership. So I don't see them competing, so they can really put a spanner in the works here. I think that Selkirk are going to go for the rest of the season. They're going to win some games, they're going to lose some games, but Edinburgh Accies realistically have been spoken about quite a lot in terms of that top 4 race. So I think it's a vital game for Edinburgh Accies.
Let's move to National 1 then, and the results from last week, starting with Ayr 25, GHA 23, a last gasp win for Ayr after being 14 points down, remember. GHA kicking themselves, no doubt, but Ayr finding a way to win, and they've been doing that all season. For instance, at Biggar earlier.
Biggar, Gala, what's on ends. All those games, at some point in that fixture, it's been squeaky bum time, and every single time they've been able to pull away. And this is a game against a GHA team who have been playing at the top level of club rugby for a long time, and obviously know the importance of the fixture. Not had the best start to their season, but they're obviously able to perform and get up for this fixture against Ayr. So, it's another big victory, and I do see, injuries and availability of players comes into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about Ayr being undefeated come game 16-17, because they've been that impressive.
And that's the interesting thing, isn't it? Because we have been talking about Ayr, almost putting them on a pedestal this season, probably because we've seen Gala and Melrose fall away a wee bit. But it's the fact, as you say, that even in a tough finish, they find the way over that winning line, and that's special.
Yeah, and I totally agree, but you kind of look at the makeup of their squad, with obviously Reese coming back. Potty is brilliant in the back row, and Pete McCallum as well. He's an experienced player that's won the Premiership, won cups for Ayr. He has been a brilliant player for Ayr. And then into the back, McCluskey, Bova. Those names are players who should be playing Premiership rugby still. So obviously it's taken a bit of time for Ayr, for the kind of sediment to settle after Super Series and what have you, but they seem to have their act together this year, and they look like they mean business. And I just think that even those difficult games, you turn to those experienced players to drag you over the line, and that then seeps through to the rest of those young players, because you learn a lot off of those experienced heads. If you've got a young squad, it's difficult. You can only see in the Super Series, if you've got a young squad, how difficult it is. Once your head's down, it's down, and some teams don't let off. But when you look at club rugby, you're littered with players who have been professionals, came back to their club, or players that have stayed there for a while. They've been up and down the leagues with their clubs. They've got so much experience to pass on to these teammates and friends that, Ayr are reaping the benefits this year.
And we'll hear from Grant Anderson very, very shortly. But Biggar 19, Dundee 24 at the weekend. 0 wins from 6 games now for Biggar. And Dundee have now actually won 3 times out of the 6.
They've just not been able to get those results at all. And I backed them at the weekend. I said there's going to be a victory coming at some point, and it'll get tighter at the bottom of that league. When you started looking at some of the results, you then go out the equation going, there must be something else going on. You even look at sometimes the second team comes out and they've not got as many players available as you perhaps would anticipate. So obviously there's potentially a lack of players there as well. But still got a lot of talented rugby individuals there that are playing for Biggar. And they're another team that have perhaps some players have went and moved on elsewhere to play their rugby. So they're almost kind of the victims of their own success at times, but this season just not being able to pick up those results. And we did back them against Dundee. We'd obviously said Dundee are going through that period of transition and trying to settle, but a big victory on the road away from one of your rivals, they've bigger now need to, dust themselves down. At some point they're going to have to go back up to Dundee, and they're going to have to pick up a victory because Dundee have already beat them on their own patch. So, big games coming for bigger. There's going to be some huge encounters coming up soon.
Gala 18, Highland 22, and another win on the road from Highland, which is impressive. But again, like Ayr, they had to come from 18-3 down to win, and they scored 3 tries in the last 10 minutes from all reports to do that. Highland stay second, Gala down to 8th.
Yeah, this was a game that was really going to signal the Highland's intent this year. We said about travelling away from home. We said it was bigger, but I thought the Gala game was probably more a barometer because just Gala have been a little bit more steady than bigger so far, but Highland have been able to come to the borders and a big pitch as well, throw the ball around and go away with the victory. So that's a huge game for a huge win for them, and it does keep them in touch with Ayr at the top. And I think that before the weekend you were looking at the league thinking that if Highland weren't able to pick up that victory, Ayr can almost put their dinner suits on and put their feet up because they're almost coasting after that. But because Highland picked up that victory, it does keep them in touch and distance, and that's somewhere that they'll have to stay constantly until the end of the season, put pressure on Ayr and hope they slip up, because that's what they're going to need to do. So still some big tests on the road for Highland to come, but that's one of them passed.
Well, Ayr came back from being behind, Highland came back from being behind. What about this one? GHK 40, Watsonians 40, and if Gala were beating themselves up over throwing a 15-point lead away, what on earth will Watsonians be thinking after being 33-5 adrift and letting GHK back in the match to make up a 28-point deficit?
I remember hearing that result coming through in your coverage at the weekend, and hearing that Watsonians were coasting. It's one of those games that you hear the result and you go, right, okay, and you already put in your mind it's a Watsonians win. So to see the final result come through was phenomenal. A great fight back. To come back against a team that stuck 40 points on you anyway. To be able to reply and come back and snatch it. It's a huge effort from GHK. So plaudits to them.
And that's 2 games this season where that kind of happened. Remember, Stu Mel were at home to Kirkcaldy, wasn't it? And they had a similar lead. I think it was about 33 points to 5. And then the competitiveness of these matches is fantastic. So 40 points to 40, that one, a very high scoring draw. I don't think I've heard of many above that. Melrose 28. Glasgow Accies 62. Now Accies hit 60 points for the second match in a row, but hands up if you thought it would be at the Greenyards against Melrose, because Accies 28-7 up early on. Melrose came back to make it 28 each, and then 32 unanswered points from Accies to go back to Glasgow with all 5 points.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that result, and we did say as well that it was a fixture that Melrose had to win to have any realistic hope of getting promoted. I do think you can almost write them off now, which is, they're almost double the points tally away from Ayr, and they're relying on Ayr to slip up, and then after that they're relying on Highland to slip up. So it's going to be a huge task to get back into this now. They've got a young squad at the Greenyards, got a lot of young players that some are tasting their first kind of years in senior rugby. They've got some experienced players as well. They've lost a lot of players as well, Cruikshank and Dobie obviously in the front row, which is huge in National 1, to get parity up front and then try, and they've got a lot of players in behind the scrum obviously, Melrose, that have got great skill set, great experience, but just not able to grind out these results at the moment, and they've perhaps just played themselves out of the title race.
Let's have a look at that table then. National 1, Ayr at the top, played 7, won 7, can't argue with that, 125 points difference, and 5 try bonuses along the way. They're on 33. Second, Highland, played 7, won 6, 27 points. Now Glasgow Accies in third position and a game in hand. They're on 22. Melrose in fourth place, 18 points for them. The same amount as GHA in 5th place, but GHA have a game in hand. Dundee now up to 6th with 15 points. Watsonians in 7th with 14. Gala in 8th on 13. GHK 9th on 13. And Bigger at the bottom. Still no wins. 6 points for them. They do have that game in hand though, but very, very congested, isn't it? From Melrose in 4th down to GHK in 9th position. That's 6 clubs, 5 points separating them.
Yeah, and I think, it just shows in National 1, obviously, in the last few years, we've seen a really competitive league up the top, maybe 4-5 teams, going on a good run, being able to keep it tight at the top. But this season, obviously Ayr running away with it, and other teams are just picking points off each other. It's a really turbulent league in terms of results coming through, but the one consistent thing that's happened, unfortunately for Biggar this season, is they've been the team that have yet to pick up a victory in that division.
4 losing bonus points, though.
Yeah, 4 losing bonus points, but they're still losing bonus points. They're getting close, but they're still not being able to pick up a victory. So great that you're picking up bonus points, and they might be vital come the end of the season. It shows that they're getting close, but it also highlights the fact that they're not being able to win.
Whereas Orkney in Division 3, the opposite.
Yeah, there's other teams. Orkney's a great example because they've had 4 really tight victories that they've been able to see out. And you think about Ayr as well, they've been involved in tight games that they've been able to get them to the other side, and one of them was against Biggar as well. So there's been games where Biggar have been close or been on the cusp of victory that they've then just not been able to see it through. So yeah, losing bonus points it is great. They've obviously got 2 try bonuses there as well, but the stark thing there is it's a losing bonus point, and if it keeps in that habit, they won't matter for much.
Well, this Saturday's games in National 1, starting with Ayr against Highland, first against second. Let's hear from Ayr head coach Grant Anderson.
Thoughts on last Saturday was a frustrating one for us because, like I'd said to you, it was probably our strongest team on paper, but we just didn't execute. We didn't execute an attack. We didn't function in D, if I'm honest. And then, experienced guys were then making individual mistakes, which then caused a wee bit of negativity and frustration throughout the squad. It's a good challenge for our squad to try and come back from that. We had quite straight talking words at half time, let's say, and we got a wee bit of a reaction in the second half, and then we managed to build a wee bit of momentum towards the end of the game, and then obviously we were managing our forwards, got on top of their forwards. I think they tired. We managed to get over the line, and then Jamie Bova, who I actually had put on the bench for the game, he came on at half time, made a positive impact, and then rescued us again from the touchline. So I was immensely proud of his ability to come on and do that, keep a cool head. The game itself probably wasn't a great brand of rugby. We only made 68 tackles, which I think tells you what GHA had offered in terms of attack. Certainly our defence wasn't where it should have been, and certainly our own attack, like I said, it didn't really function. We didn't play in the right areas, and we didn't play the way we wanted to, and certainly the way we had set out to on Thursday night. So looking ahead to this Saturday, it's just another week for us. We're not getting caught up in the whole numbers game or who's where or at this stage of the season. It's just another week for us. So we've hopefully learned from things that we didn't do well last Saturday. So we've had some quite honest conversations. We've been quite focused in our training last night. So we're looking forward to Highland coming down. But for me, very much just another chance to right the wrongs of last week, really. Another chance for us to go and put on a performance, another chance to entertain our home crowd, obviously looking to get another win. We'll have 1 or 2 changes in personnel, just again other guys coming back from injury, reshaping a wee bit in what we're trying to do in our attacking system, and hopefully our defensive system will function the way we know it can, and we'll end up on the right side of the scoreboard on Saturday afternoon.
Grant Anderson, backlash from Ayr for this week, or will Highland reduce the gap on the league leaders and be the first team to beat Ayr this season?
I'm not going to put a prediction on this for the reason that I've seen the results. I've not been able to watch the teams, live or see much from either squad this season. So you can only go off the results. Ayr have been in irresistible form, being able to win tight games. They've obviously been able to put a couple of teams to the sword as well. But Highland have been steady, which is something that is perhaps not 2 words that you'd have in the same sentence before, because being steady, it has shown that at home and away they've been able to, be consistent at least. Yes, they've been defeated, but this is a great weekend from. This is going to be, we spoke about it last weekend. If Highland weren't able to pick up the victory, then there's a sizable gap at the top of the division. It rolls on to this week, because if they're not able to pick up the victory against Ayr, then there is the sizable gap, because nobody can go above Highland in terms of points tally. So yeah, there'll be a huge chasm in between Ayr and the rest of the teams in the league if they manage to get the victory.
Dundee against Melrose. Dundee going in the right direction, as we've heard already. Melrose coming off the back of 2 sizable losses. Here's Melrose head coach Ian Chisholm.
Last weekend's result at home was brutally disappointing. I think we started really poorly, we clawed the game back, and there was points where it looked like Glasgow Accies were going to break, and that we were on top and we had all the momentum. Got it back to 28-all, and then we had a couple opportunities to score and never took them. And the trend of the season it's been us that have went up a gear in the last 20 minutes of the games, and this was the opposite way around. Glasgow Accies really up the tempo a wee bit. We just fell off the face of the earth. There was a lot of mental errors. A few of our guys struggled to stay in the game, and I probably made a few replacements which hurt us rather than helped us. And selection's going to be interesting this week. Do we back the guys and just reassure them that it was just an off week, or do we bring in whole changes? And that's the big conversation that we're having with our coaching group at the moment. But look, this weekend's an opportunity for us to get back on track. We're travelling away up to Dundee. The weather's to be poor, and sometimes that can be a real leveller when it comes to how teams want to play. And we're going with as strong a side as we can get. We've got Dougie Crawford dropping out of the squad this week. He is away. Bruce Colvin's likely to drop out the squad as well. He's struggling with an injury. However, we do welcome Finn Barry back into the fold. We're unsure whether he'll be selected or not yet, but we're pretty pleased with how our front row went last week. It's the first time this season that we've been able to launch off the scrums, and if anybody who was at the game, they would be really impressed by our scrum attack. We scored, or we made line breaks off the majority of scrums that we had. It was just our line out that suffered. We had 3 line outs in the Glasgow Accies 5 metre line that all went the other way, or we made errors off it. And other games this season we'd have scored off them. I think our driving maul's a real weapon for us, and it was just really disappointing. And you just think about how the game would have went if our line out was functioning. It wasn't a throw-in or anything, it was missed lifts, it was miscommunication. And the boys have really stuck in this week, and they're really driving it and owning this themselves and making sure that something like that never happens again.
Ian Chisholm, and that result against Accies will have certainly hurt Ian and the players for sure. Can they turn it around though against Dundee? It's at Dundee.
As you said before, Dundee have had 3 victories so far this season, and they did get off to a difficult start, and we perhaps thought they were going to be, potentially could have been the basement boys in this division, but that mantle's been taken just now by Biggar. So they'll go into it with confidence, and I think Melrose will go in with it now with a little less confidence. It's all fair and well perhaps being defeated once and then twice, but at home they have had a couple of really difficult results. The caveat to that is away from home against Biggar, they put in a really good performance and got a good result. They didn't concede as well. So, Melrose can travel, but it's an intriguing game. I think, it's really difficult to call. You would say, looking at it, if you go in with limited knowledge and you look at the league table and the prestige that Melrose have, you would say Melrose going to favourites, but it's going to be a difficult game.
GHA versus GHK, a reporter's nightmare describing this one. I have problems every single week, but you have to say that GHA will start favourites with home advantage and a good performance against Ayr last week, but GHK's comeback against Watsonians will have done them no harm at all.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a difficult one for me to analyse right now as well, but GHA have came down from the Premiership, and I've said it time after time, so they come down with a lot of experience. Perhaps not had the best start to life in National 1. Getting relegated, you're always going to have to change your squad, and your club changes, and there's a few things that you need to go through to try and steady the ship. But they come into this, the more experienced campaigners. GHK on the other hand, have been rising up through the leagues over the last few years, and potentially just now they're not in the best position in the table, but it's a Glasgow ding dong, so I'm sure it'll be. That we've seen them before with likes of Accies. I think it was GHK they played.
68-5 at GHK.
There we go. You're like Rain Man, because that's just came off the top of your head. But they put in a really. We thought it'd be tighter, and they've absolutely thumped them, and then being able to thump Melrose as well. So Glasgow Accies certainly are the pick of the bunch just now. But these two teams, you would expect them to get up for the occasion, and it'll be a tight Glasgow derby.
Glasgow Accies versus Gala. Last 2 games they scored over 60 points on the road. That's Accies, of course. They're now back home facing Gala in 8th place. Let's find out what Gala Director of Rugby Ewan Swinton has to say this week.
Last Saturday's game ended in an absolutely gut-wrenching way for Gala. We were well on top in the game against Highland. We were 18-3 up with just over 5 minutes to go, and were defending resolutely. Highland were not looking like scoring until we lost a centre to an offside decision which resulted in a yellow card. That created space out wide, which Highland were, to their own credit, were good enough to take advantage of, and that 18-3 lead disappeared very quickly and became the defeat that was recorded. So yeah, devastating in itself, but not the end of the world. I'm a great believer in the poetry of sport. It's full of triumph and tragedy in the sporting context. You have highs and lows. Highland certainly had a high at the end of the game on Saturday, and we had a low. However, it's not terminal. The boys have to remember that they were on top of a team which is doing very well for these 75 minutes, and at the point that we were even-handed, we were on top for the vast majority of the game. The Highland management were almost embarrassed at the end. However, they took their high, and quite rightly so. They were good enough to take advantage of a situation which presented itself. But we cannot forget that a very young group of lads who'd been subject to a number of call-offs were well and truly on top in the game until things just ran away from them in a manner that sometimes happens in rugby and indeed in all sport. It's part of the beauty of sport, hard to take, but you simply have to do that and move on. So that's what we'll do. We now head up to Glasgow Accies, who are going great guns, had a fantastic result at the Greenyards on Saturday, and on the face of it, it's a daunting challenge. But I choose to take the positive view. We still do have an excellent crop of young players. We will have a fair bit of bulk returning to the forwards. Tim McCavanagh and hopefully Cammy Pate will be back in the reckoning for this weekend. And hopefully Angus Dunn will return from injury as well. These three, along with any other changes that come along when the final selection is made, will make quite a difference. Our backs are very capable. We perhaps need a wee bit more control that will come with experience and indeed confidence. Accies are going tremendously well. They're very well coached. They're a very well-led club, and they're very much on the up. I'm not unrealistic about the challenge that we face, but I am extremely positive about the group that we have. The major lack that we have at the moment is the confidence that comes with winning. And there's only one way to get it, and that's to roll up your sleeves, absolutely knock your pan in and go for it. And that is the attitude that we'll take up to Glasgow on Saturday. I'm not going to be silly about predictions, but I am going to say that I am confident in our group of young players and that they will come good, and there is no reason why they shouldn't go up to Glasgow on Saturday and make a statement about themselves and come away with the win. That's the attitude we'll take there, and hopefully the result will mirror that.
Ewan Swinton, big test for Gala this week after 2 home losses against one of the surprise packages really in Glasgow Accies. Let's not forget they were playing in National 2 last season.
Yeah, they were, and it was obviously a great finish to the league in National 2 last year as well, because the likes of Falkirk were there or thereabouts. I think Newton Stuart were the other team that could potentially go up. So they were the team that's managed to snatch it on the last day in dramatic fashion as well. So Glasgow Accies are thriving in National 1, and you feel that another victory this weekend, it does keep them towards the top of the table. I do think it's going to be huge. I don't want to write off the league early on, but it's going to be a huge effort to get back in touch with Ayr. But getting that consistency and getting another victory will do them the world of good. But Gala, on the other hand, they've been inconsistent, but they have impressed in flashes this season in National 1. But it's going to be difficult to go on the road to Glasgow Accies because they've been scoring points, and that's the daunting thing when you go up, when you go away from home. Or when you're playing at home as well, but especially when you go away from home against a team who are a bit of an unknown quantity to all these sides in this division, or most of them at least. When you're going and you're seeing the scores that they're putting on, your fear is defence, and you start focusing on defence. And bearing in mind, Gala have been leaky in defence as well. So, you think it might be another good afternoon for Glasgow Accies.
And how important is it having Ryan Grant and Rory Jackson in your coaching staff, former Scottish internationals? I mean, that's got to give the youngsters an awful lot of confidence.
I think it is really important to have players of that ilk coming back into the club game. We've seen it before with players perhaps before the semi-pro stuff, but they were perhaps playing for the likes of Ayr or Heriots or Melrose, and then when things have changed, we did see a lot of the players scatter back to their previous clubs or go somewhere else that there was perhaps more incentive or more opportunity. But the professional players coming back in are brilliant because they've been in that environment where rugby is their job and rugby is their day-to-day business. They know it, they understand it. They've been working with some of the best personnel in the country whose rugby is their job. and they're going into an environment where rugby isn't their job, rugby's their hobby. But anything that you can do to get some knowledge and understanding and improve your outlook on rugby is instrumental. And there's no better people to do it than ex-professional rugby players coming back into the club environment. I remember Mark Robertson came to Peebles at a time when we had a slight change in coaching. He was doing it through Edinburgh, but he almost became our head coach, because he just had a simple philosophy of rugby, didn't overcomplicate it, and he taught you a lot of things that you would never ever think of, because I was an electrician during the day, and then when I was going to the Gates to train at night, I was getting spoken to by a rugby professional telling me how I should be going about my business. And you absorb all that because they have a completely different outlook. They're not volunteers as such. They are really intelligent rugby individuals. And, you know, especially the balance there, you've got a fly half and a forward, an ex-British Lion, you know, going back to a club to lend some experience. So it's invaluable for those youngsters and good role models to look up to.
The other game is Watsonians against Biggar, 7th versus 10th at the start of the season. You had to fancy both of them to be in that top half of the table. It's not what's actually happened, and they've both played 6 games so far, stuck in the bottom half, and as we've mentioned already, Biggar without a win.
Yeah, I think the game against Gala was probably a big kind of eye-opener, and thinking that, well, Watsonians might mean business this year, but, you know, both of those teams are pretty much beside each other in the table towards the foot. Biggar, I'd never seen it coming. They've almost got this similar-ish squad, lost a couple of players, but yeah, it's been a complete change in character at Hartree Mill in terms of results. Anyway, you know, I don't know what the kind of overarching issues are at Hartree Mill at the moment, but they just cannot get a victory. You know, we did allude to it before about losing bonus points, but I think that the important thing there is the word losing. Like, they're still losing games, and away from home again, they will fancy their chances against Watsonians because they've got a lovely, expansive brand of rugby at Myerside. It's kind of testament to the older squads that they've got. So this might be a favourable game for Biggar, but you never ask for a prediction. But if you're looking for who goes into this favourites, you've got to say Watsonians because they've had a few victories this year.
And I think if you look at Watsonians and what happened last week, I think if they do even think about getting the foot off the gas once they've got a lead, they'll certainly be keeping it on this time.
Yeah, and I think as well that you look at the points that the teams have been able to accumulate so far, we're probably at a stage of the season where it's a reasonable indicator as to how the teams are performing. Biggar haven't been able to get many sizable point tallies in a game, where Watsonians have on occasion, so we know they can score tries, we know that they can keep the scoreboard ticking over. Biggar haven't been able to do that, so that makes it does make it a really interesting fixture. Again, a difficult one to call, but you know, it's almost desperate times for Biggar, because even a bonus point victory, doesn't take them off the foot of the table.
Alright, let's move into National 2. Only 2 games last weekend, both delayed 7 days due to the weather the previous week. Aberdeen Grammar 15, Berwick 12, both without a win before this match, and until a late try by Aberdeen to seal it, it looked like Berwick would come from behind to win this one, but Berwick just above Aberdeen in the table, still on points difference.
Yeah, we did say it was a huge game going into last weekend, and there was a lot wrapped around it as well in terms of personnel and logistics of getting to Aberdeen, and obviously the rearranged fixture and asking for dispensation, but ultimately the crux of it is Berwick almost were able to get away with the victory, but Aberdeen, you know, they've been slowly improving, and that's them able to get their first victory of the season. So Aberdeen in the end have just been able to see out the victory. So, you know, it keeps it really interesting. We have said National 2's an intriguing league. There's a lot of teams there that potentially could put their hand up for promotion, and there's equally some that are trying to keep their hands down for relegation, because there's big fixtures coming up this weekend as well, which I know we'll get to, but it's Berwick have went there. They've been able to pick up a point, which it means it's only a 3-point loss against Aberdeen in terms of league points. So Aberdeen have to travel down to Scremerston, and I'm sure there won't be as many barriers for both teams when it comes to that game later on in the season.
Stirling County 49, Kirkcaldy 26. This was the game that both teams didn't really want to play, but dispensation, as you mentioned earlier, turned down for this match, and the Aberdeen Berwick one as well. Clearly Stirling the stronger side and back to winning ways after 3 defeats.
Yeah, another team that's found it quite difficult to adjust to life in a different league, but there was a lot surrounding this game as well. But ultimately, both teams have been able to throw the ball about, score a lot of points, and Stirling County get that win that we were saying last week. If they get that win, it's able to kind of crane their necks upwards and look towards the top of the table as opposed to towards the foot, but it does nudge Kirkcaldy back down towards that bottom end of the table. So, again, I wasn't really expecting it from either side in the division this year that they were going to be as inconsistent as they have been, but that's the way that they are, and Stirling are able to pick up a win against Kirkcaldy.
National 2 league table then, let's have a quick look. Lass Wade at the top, played 6-1-5, 25 points. Peebles still in second on 22, third Gordonians 21, fourth Falkirk 21, fifth Newton Stewart 18, sixth Stirling County 16, seventh Kirkcaldy 11, eighth Stewart's Melville on 10, and Berwick in ninth with 8 points. Aberdeen Grammar in 10th with 8 points. So that's the state of play in National League 2. Top of the table not affected by these two results. Valuable points for Aberdeen though, and of course Stirling chasing the leading pack with a much needed win.
Yeah, I think we alluded to that as well, that the games that went on in the kind of the fallow week was not going to really impact the top of the division, but it sets it up nicely. All the teams have apart from a couple of them because of front row cover, they've almost played the same games. So, it does paint a clearer picture of that division, but it sets stuff up nicely going into this weekend.
So this week's fixtures then, Gordonians against Newton Stewart, third against fifth. Newton Stewart getting a morale-boosting win over Peebles, and Gordonians, of course, taking the unbeaten record of Lass Wade.
Yeah, the Gordonians Lass Wade result was a big one. It was an interesting one, and it keeps things really tight at the top of that division. So
away from home as well.
Yeah, away from home. Lass Wade is a really challenging place to play. The pitch, I feel, is quite narrow, and you've obviously got the bank in. You've got quite a lot of spectators do get to that ground, so make it quite intimidating. So that result was huge for Gordonians, but certainly this is home comforts. It's going to be a really kind of intriguing fixture because of Newton Stewart able to pick up that victory against Peebles as well. They've both got aspirations of keeping pressure at the top, so someone's got to give this weekend, and Gordonians at home, you would certainly fancy them, but Newton Stewart have slowly but surely been able to be a little bit more consistent after a wobbly start to the season.
Kirkcaldy versus Berwick, two clubs not going well at the moment in terms of getting points. What does Berwick's Paul Pringle feel about it all?
So last Saturday we were up at Aberdeen and what we knew was going to be a pretty difficult tie, with a team scrapping with us at the bottom and looking for their first win. We knew they would be targeting this game, and there was no surprise, and it was a tight affair. Unfortunately, we lost 15-12 to a very well drilled defensive unit. We turned at half time, going into a strong wind, 5-0 down. We expected really then that the lads would kick on from there, and we would secure the W. Unfortunately for me though, our game management was pretty poor. We didn't play in the right areas of the pitch. When we did get our noses in front, we immediately let them back in again, and even then late on we had a pretty kickable penalty to tie the match, and with 2 minutes to go we decided to kick to the corner instead. We did think we'd secured a win with the last play of the game when a try was awarded. Unfortunately though, the referee then went back for an earlier infraction, and that cost us the tie. But solely we have to look at ourselves there. It was for me, it came down to our game management. In terms of the other areas, so personally, I don't think our front five, we didn't really work hard enough in terms of being effective on the pitch. So taking on the carries, making enough tackles around the pitch, and it then had a snowball effect on the rest of the team. So we had a lot to look at, coming away from it. We've worked hard last night at training. The lads really are up for this Saturday. We've got a few guys coming back, so hopefully we'll be welcoming back Jordan Jackson, Ben Nicholson, Cam Rogerson. These are guys who will have a real impact on the game, and give us a bit more structure in terms of how we approach the game. This weekend we'll go to Kirkcaldy and on the road again. To be honest, we're just really looking forward to getting this tie, and really targeting that first win. The lads are in a positive frame of mind, which you probably wouldn't expect after 6 losses, but they've all been fairly tight margins. You can see that by our losing bonus points. We know we just need to keep tweaking and learning the lessons from the previous week, which is the key, and the W will come. So there's no panic. It certainly is not from Colin or myself. We're just conveying that to the lads, making sure that we're in that right frame of mind. If we can keep the intensity levels high this Saturday, make sure that 1 to 15 we're putting the work rate in, sharing our carries and tackles, then the result will look after itself. So keen for Saturday and hopefully get that first W.
Paul Pringle, two teams desperate for points, a good opportunity for Berwick to maybe nick this one, but equally Kirkcaldy, they'll be targeting it as well.
Yeah, it's a really challenging place to go, Beveridge Park, and I do recall when I was getting into the first team at Peebles, we were in the same division as Kirkcaldy and Gala at the same time, and it was the three of the teams at the top of the league, and I think we got defeated by Kirkcaldy up at Beveridge Park, but quite convincingly as well. And it was always a torrid place to go. At the time we were in Division 3 and they're number 8. His name is completely evaded my head, but made it into the Scotland Club International team. That's how good he was, and that was the sort of calibre of player they had at the time. But finding things really challenging, and as you say, it's an opportunity for Berwick to try and pick up a victory and do what they weren't able to do to Aberdeen, is try and get as many points as you can away from home against somebody who you're in a relegation battle with.
Peebles versus Aberdeen Grammar. Peebles lost their last 2 games but are still in second place in the table. Their head coach is Graham Patterson.
So yeah, almost 2 weeks ago we were down at Newton Stuart away. It was our last game, and a really disappointing and frustrating performance. Both from the coaches and the players were really kind of disheartened at the time with regards to how we went about that game. It was one of those games where we had 3 or 4 good chances and just didn't convert them. We allowed them to dominate the breakdown with their speed over the ball, and that was the key area which was the difference probably in us converting those chances or allowing them to gain some chances into the game. Fair play to them. They took their opportunities. They kicked their goals. They kind of got into 22 a few times, got a penalty, and knocked it over the posts. And again, that was a kind of key area in terms of points differential, as them able to convert those entries into the 22 area, or certainly deep into our half. The flip side to that is we had a chance to reboot over the last week or so, and we've certainly done that. We went over that game as well as the other games, and we've identified a couple of key areas that we needed to sort of work on during that week off, and to get us back on track and as to where we were performing prior to that game and the one previous as well against Last Wade. So we've come up with a plan, involved the players. We had a good video session night, seeing, identifying and problem solving some of the areas that were going to be important to us to turn this around in terms of this wee sort of mini blip in terms of results. Although we didn't feel as though we were in dire straits or anything like that, speaking to the player groups, certainly the senior players, is we just need to get back on track, and a couple of key areas were vital in doing that. So we've trained really hard, and I feel that the confidence has really returned, looking to worry about ourselves rather than oppositions too much, and just going out there and imposing what we want to do on the opposition rather than worrying too much about what they're going to do. And going back to our fundamental games, looking at that set piece area, how can we manipulate the other teams round about that to create some good opportunities, and then executing those as well. And that has been our theme over the past week and a half or so in doing that. So looking ahead to this Saturday, we've got a great opportunity to get back home against Aberdeen Grammar, who will not be taken lightly by ourselves despite their lowly position in the league. We've looked at a couple of videos of theirs. They play a particular style which we will look to shut down pretty quickly at source, and that should allow us to then go on and win this game. But as I say, we need to be on our game, and that's the messages that the players have been given by the coaching group. A few guys come back into the reckoning. James Dow rolled his ankle prior to the Newton Stuart game, so he was ruled out of that one, so he'll come back into the back line probably at 13. And Buster Davidson will be involved in the squad as well. He's trained really hard over the last couple of weeks and really impressed myself and Greg Rayburn as well with regards to his desire to get back into that first 15. He's going to be champing at the bit to get out onto that field and show what he can do and hopefully nail down a place going forward. The other exciting bit of sort of selection news was we've got young Ross Wolfenden moving up from the Colts. He's been passed to play senior rugby, and as part of his planned development, we're looking to integrate him into the first 15 squad. He's a player with a lot of potential, and if we can help him along his way and his pathway to wherever it takes him, then that's what we're looking to do. But his skill set is pretty good. For somebody of only 17 years of age, he's very mature, and I'm sure he'll do really well over the next block of games coming into that senior squad. And he's moved seamlessly from Colts training to senior training, and I'm really excited to see him go at a senior game and see how he goes there. But I have full confidence, and as have our coaches and other coaches in the sort of regional academy setup as well. So that's a view of what we're looking to do at Peebles as well. That's another snapshot of us producing young players through our great youth system, putting together a development plan in conjunction with the regional academy coaches, and putting it into place to allow these players to flourish and hopefully showcase their skills at the right level. Looking into Saturday's game, we're looking for a return to a bit more expansive game, looking to move that ball around. Certainly in the pitch that we've got, it should be good opportunity for us to use both our set piece skills and our phase play skills to move Aberdeen around a bit and to squeeze them in terms of defensive sets that we have to put together. It'll come down to getting the right attitude. That's maybe what's the biggest area, and that's what the players have impressed upon themselves to get correct for this Saturday, and we're looking for a good reaction after those couple of losses to get back in that hunt for the top spot in the league.
Graham Patterson, well, this has home win plastered all over it on paper, but can Peebles get back on the horse this week? Because if they don't, they could actually find themselves dropping a few places.
Yeah, I think they definitely need to pick up the victory here, especially against an Aberdeen side who are potentially not in the best of shape at the moment. Obviously able to pick up that victory against Berwick, but they're two teams towards the foot of the table, and Peebles have started brightly. Obviously the defeat against Newton Stuart was a little bit of a sucker punch to them, but they just didn't hit their straps at all that day. I was lucky enough to, well, maybe unfortunate enough to watch that game. I was just a bit underwhelmed by the performance, especially what I'd been hearing and seeing snippets of before. So yeah, just not able to perform, but back at the Gates in a nice expansive pitch, they'll be hoped to go a bit better. But again, like Aberdeen Grammar, you could see they've had a slight change in their squad, lost a lot of important players. You see Craig Shepherd still in the centre for them as well, who's been there for a while. So they do have players that have got a lot of experience, but I was just having a little look through the squads as well during the week, and there's been a lot of changes. There's been a lot of changes to the squad throughout the start of the season. So that potentially could start to settle, and they maybe hit their form a little bit sooner.
Stumel against Lass Wade this Saturday. Peter Wright's men having tasted defeat now, while Stumel have been making steady progress and play reasonably well at home. Alex Haggart is Stumel's head coach.
Yeah, looking forward to playing Lass Wade at the weekend. I think we know what we'll be facing. I think we'll be facing a pretty sort of attritional team, a really physical team, and I think we'll probably have to mirror our team selection to cope with that. I think the boys against Stirling County highlighted to themselves the blueprint of how to play rugby, which is very sort of minimal in our own half and keep the ball and build pressure in the opposition half. So, we're definitely looking to build on what we did last week against, a really good Lass Wade side. And there's obviously a huge amount of momentum at that club, which is awesome, particularly coming up from Nat 3 and then building and being at the top in Nat 2 since the start of the season is really impressive. So, we've got to show them a huge amount of respect and really front up against them physically. And hopefully if we do that, we can start playing a wee bit of our own rugby. But then at the same time, looking at the weather forecast for the weekend and the storm that's coming, the high winds and all that kind of stuff, we might have to temper our own rugby a little bit and really just get into a bit of a war of attrition. That's our plan for this weekend.
Alex Haggart, I can see Stu Mel getting better in the final two-thirds of the season, but Last Wade at the top of the table are a strong side, and Peter Wright's influence can't be underestimated.
Yeah, I think we've always, or I've certainly always alluded to the structure that Peter Wright brings to squads, and he's got a lot of experience in rugby. He watches a lot of rugby, and obviously in the media as well. He's got a lot of good knowledge and good experience, and that's what he brings. He brings that structure and direction to squads. And Last Wade obviously have had a good start to the season from that, but the defeat has obviously came in as well in their last outing against Gordonian. So yeah, I agree with you as well. Stu Mel, when we covered the game against Peebles, I was in Inverleith. I was very underwhelmed by the quality that was perhaps on show from their part. That's what I was kind of impressed by Peebles, which is why I was so underwhelmed by their performance at Newton Stuart. But Stuart's Melville have started to really get a little bit more consistent, a little bit more competitive in games, and perhaps had a little bit of luck as well. In that game against Peebles, there was a few injuries which changed personnel. The scrum half, number 8, both getting injured, both having to be withdrawn, and that's a huge shift in the dynamic of your team. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenging afternoon. Peebles were able to get away with a bonus point victory, made a hard work of it in the end, but it's not an easy place to go, and Last Wade will be doing well to come away with the same.
Stirling County versus Falkirk. Falkirk have a game in hand, could easily be sitting at the top of the table right now if their game against Stu Mel had gone ahead a couple of weeks ago. But what does Stirling's head coach Craig Deakins have to say this week?
It was a really good win for us in the weekend for the players. I think it was a bit of a confidence boost as well. We've been on the back of a couple of really tough results after poor performances, and on Saturday the players showed the character to actually turn that around, and we took the game to Kirkcaldy, and we went some early scores up. We went at half time 39-14 against Kirkcaldy. Maybe a wee bit frustrating was the fact in the second half we allowed them back into the game a wee bit. Maybe we did sit off, but for me that's a bit of a mindset thing, and we need to sort of challenge the players about that. Actually, when we're on top of teams, we need to make sure in the second half we put them away. However, against a Kirkcaldy team which was a big physical heavy pack, they put us under some serious pressure at the scrum the weekend. Bit of a lesson for some of our young boys in the front row, but that certainly didn't kind of help us in the weekend. When we were in positions in the park that we could have capitalised on, and weren't winning our scrum ball as much as we should have been. Obviously, we know quite a lot about Falkirk. They are a well-established team. They're quite a senior team. They've got a lot of guys that have been there for a lot of years. They've been through the highs and the lows. A lot of really good experienced guys in there. So we know that we're going to be up against it on Saturday against these boys. Ultimately they should be top of the table at the moment. I know they've got a game in hand, but you'd expect them to win that one against Stuart's Melville. So they're going to be coming to Bridge Hall this weekend full of confidence, and also with a point to prove as well, because there is that local rivalry from Falkirk and Stirling County going on there. So it's going to be a bit of a physical encounter across the pitch for the players, but I'm kind of hoping that it'll be a good learning experience for our guys as well, especially the young boys in the team. But it's one that with the selection that we've got for this weekend, because we'll pretty much be a carbon copy of what went out last week. We've not picked up many injuries. The more consistent we become with selection week in, week out now, we're not picking up the knocks and injuries, it's going to help the team's performance, because it isn't good when we've got so many changes happening week in, week out. So, if we can back up what we did last week against Kirkcaldy, we can move forward. That's the big thing. We're getting better every week. Our discipline's coming down. We're not getting as many penalties. We're actually turning over less ball. We're converting our chances more. So big thing for me is as long as we keep on going forward, we'll see what happens for the rest of the season.
Craig Deakins. Now they found their winning form again, but can they beat Falkirk at Bridge Hall?
Yeah, it's an interesting fixture because it's essentially a derby for both of these sides. Really close connections. Stirling County have been one of the top clubs in Scottish rugby for a long time, and served our kind of national team well. For a long period as well. So Falkirk, on the other hand, have been coming up the ranks and have been there or thereabouts over the last few years. A lot of really, really good players have went through their club. Obviously we're thinking there about like Finn Russell. There was an article the other day about his time at Stirling County, not getting opportunities, going to Falkirk, and then eventually his pathway was made from there. So the clubs have really close connections and have had different starts to the season. Falkirk look stronger. But it's a derby, and Stirling, obviously off the back of a big win against Kirkcaldy last week, will go into it with a bit of confidence.
On to National 3 then, the results from last week, some interesting games as well. Allan Glen's at the top of the table, 43, West of Scotland 25, went to form. Table toppers only dropped 1 bonus point this season. West of Scotland still at the bottom.
It's good the fact that they were able to see those results come through this weekend, and everybody can get a kind of level playing field again. But West of Scotland are finding it really challenging in this division this year, just not able to get off that foot of the table, and it's a huge points tally as well. But Allan Glen's again just able to reclaim top spot, and the top of that division is really competitive. You look at those 3 teams in terms of Allan Glen's, Orkney, PL. It's really, really competitive. And they've all got different characters in terms of the clubs. Like, one's a really, in my eyes, a really familiar name, Preston Lodge. There's been a lot of players come through that club and played international rugby.
Alan Jacobson, of course.
Jacobson, I think Scott Murray was there as well. And, you think of those players years gone by that have went through that club. Orkney have... they're just a remarkable story coming from the islands and competing at a high level in national rugby. Shows there's a great appetite out there, and they have to commit a lot to play rugby. That cannot be understated in terms of their commitment. Where Allan Glen's as well have been slowly rising up the ranks. I remember playing them in a cup game when I first started years and years ago. When I was playing, and I didn't know anything about them. So it's nice to see them, in national action competing well.
Boroughmuir 36, Howe of Fife 41. Boroughmuir now 3 wins from 6. Howe of Fife leapfrogging them, and that was a game played on Friday night under the lights at Megatland.
Yeah, it's good to see Friday night rugby is still in national action. I think there should probably be a little bit more of that. If the clubs get a little bit more autonomy to decide, I think there probably is an appetite for Friday night rugby in clubland anyway. But obviously Boroughmuir have been able to accumulate a lot of points on the pitch, but just not able to get that consistency. You see a narrow defeat against Orkney, and then obviously Howe of Fife travelling down from the kingdom to be able to escape back up over the bridge with a good victory for them. So again, Howe of Fife have been a team that have had a kind of plethora of good talent coming through their club over the last few years, but obviously over the last couple of years have had to take a backward step, and are starting to build again and try and be competitive and climb back up the leagues.
The other match was Hillhead Jordanhill 18, Preston Lodge 34. Absolutely vital result, that one. Hillhead Jordanhill also 3 from 6 now, and a big win for Preston Lodge in 3rd place, putting pressure on the top 2.
Yeah, I think Preston Lodge have been able to shake off that earlier defeat in the season. I look a lot at their social media and see the squad that they've got, and look at their second team that they're able to pop out as well, and there's certainly a good vibe at the club at the moment. So it's a good win, a really impressive win again against a team who is quite close to them in terms of points in the league, so it gives them a little gap, and again it's amazing what that does for a team in terms of what you can focus on is start looking towards the teams up above, building that confidence, making sure you get on good winning runs to find yourself in the hunt come the end of the season.
I think Preston Lodge are the only team to play in the colour teal, which is a kind of turquoisey green. Did you know that? They played in their second strip against Berwick. And of course the only other team that I know to play in teal was the South African World Cup squad when they played against Ireland, didn't they? They played in their white jerseys with that sort of turquoisey green, which they couldn't identify on the television, but I'm pretty sure that was teal as well. So now you know.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to write that down just now, but it's good fact. I didn't know that about Preston Lodge, and I didn't know that about South Africa. I didn't think I needed to, but I'm educated now, so
fantastic.
That's brilliant.
There we are. You get everything here on this podcast, but certainly Preston Lodge doing really, really well.
Yeah, I think, as I say, they shook off that defeat, and it keeps pressure up the top. There's some big games coming up in National 3. I think all the leagues, apart from National 1, they look competitive up towards the top, and National 3 is no exception, and PL obviously in 3rd place at the moment, but keeping pressure on the 2 teams at the top.
So we've got Allan Glen's first, unbeaten, 29 points. Orkney in second, unbeaten, 27 points for them. Preston Lodge in third, 26, so very, very tight at the top. Hillhead Jordanhill missing out last weekend, as we've just described, in 4th place, but adrift now by 8 points. They've got 18. Howe of Fife in 5th, also on 18. Boroughmuir in 6th on 17. Dumfries 7th place on 12. Then we've got Hamilton with 8 points in 8th position. Cartha Queen's Park 9th with 7, and West of Scotland at the bottom there, 6 points for them. Of course, Hamilton still not getting a win yet, but 4 try bonuses and 4 losing bonuses, which we almost talk about every week.
Yeah, I think the bonus points certainly towards the foot of the table are going to be really important. I don't think in the top of the tables that they might be as important, because if teams can get on a winning streak and a winning run, then that'll kind of take care of itself. But you never know. It's obviously it was important in National 2 last year, with the restructure to the leagues and stuff. So I think certainly at the foot of the table, those bonus points are going to be vital, and it's amazing to see them, Hamilton, being able to accumulate so many.
Cartha Queen's Park and West of Scotland 9th and 10th, they're certainly going to be concerned, but Dumfries not out of the woods yet either, are they?
No, I think they're definitely not, because West of Scotland, I'm sure they've been able to pick up a win, so it shows that they're there or thereabouts. Like they can. There's certainly teams in that division that they can beat. They're not the whipping boys by any means. And this league again, well, at the foot of the table, will probably have a truer picture in 3 games' time when we hit the turn. So certainly still a lot of rugby to be played, but Dumfries and. Yeah, you would say up to they're the teams that perhaps are starting to kind of look at the trapdoor beneath them.
Well, this week only 4 games, as Allan Glens versus Orkney has been put back to the end of the season, 2nd of March in fact, which could be absolutely vital, but of course it gives Preston Lodge a chance to go top of the table. But let's have a look at Boroughmuir versus Hillhead Jordan Hill first of all. 6th against 4th, 1 point between them, and crucial for both.
Yeah, it's really important, you think, for Hillhead Jordan Hill to react off of the back of their defeat last weekend, that they do react and try and get towards the top of the table, because you feel a defeat here against Boroughmuir, then they're almost cut adrift, because the other teams will start to, they've shown it already, they'll start nudging away from these other teams, and then one by one they'll go away. So Hillhead want to still be in that conversation, they want to be in the mix, so it's a big weekend for them, and they'll be aiming for a victory, but I'm sure Boroughmuir will be wanting to try and steady their ship as well, because being able to score points at home has not been an issue. It's their leaky defence that they're really struggling with at the moment.
How are Fife against Cartha Queen's Park, 5th against 9th, and you have to say a major upset if Cartha win at Duffus Park.
Yeah, Cartha again are a team that's found it really challenging so far this season, and there's an opportunity for a little bit of a shake-up at the bottom of the league. We'll go through obviously you'll go through the rest of the fixtures shortly, but yeah, if Cartha Queen's Park can pick up a victory away from home, it's probably going to go against form, want to try and get that momentum as well. You would say they're almost in the same conversation as Hillhead. They can still realistically put a little bit of pressure on the teams at the top, but they would need to win this weekend to make that realistic.
Preston Lodge against Hamilton then, 3rd against 8th. Should be a home win at Penny Pit, but as mentioned before, Hamilton's efforts haven't really been rewarded this season, and they're a better team than their league position suggests.
Yeah, they're a team that you probably look at the bonus points and you've got more of a case to argue in terms of they've got 4 losing bonus points, but they've also got 4 try bonuses. So, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag for Dumfries. But yeah, I do think it's probably going to be a little bit tighter than the league positions suggest at the weekend during this game. The only thing is Preston Lodge looking really, really good at home. They're looking like they're getting stronger and stronger each week, and I think they're getting more confident just when you look at the results coming out, their social media, the way that they've got the consistency in their team as well. It would certainly be a surprise if Hamilton won, but they can certainly make a good fist of it.
West of Scotland against Dumfries, 10th against 7th, big game at Burnbrae, a good win for West, and suddenly they could get to within a point of Dumfries.
Yeah, I think this is one of those intriguing fixtures that is going to be vital. You talk about towards the top of the table, and we talk about the Premiership and making sure your home form counts to get that home semi-final, but also you talk about making sure that when you're playing some of your rivals, you don't gift them points, you try and maximise that opportunity, and for both of these sides this weekend that is an opportunity. So West of Scotland obviously have home advantage, but they'll be hoping that they can at least pick up 4 points and restrict the Dumfries from getting any. They don't want to be just going away with a 2-point gain or anything like that. They want to make sure they're getting the victory, but certainly Dumfries will be eyeing up a victory as well away from home, and try and kick West of Scotland when they're down and keep a little bit of distance between them as well.
Finally, International 4 then. Greenock Wanderers 41, Murrayfield Wanderers 40. Huge result, massive win for Greenock, down in 9th place and their first win of the season. Murrayfield in 6, but despite not winning 4 of their games, Murrayfield have picked up try bonuses in 5 of their 6 games so far and 3 losing bonuses, and again in this match picked up 2 bonus points, so they could easily be in the top half. And as I said, Greenock's first win of the season.
Yeah, it was obviously a bit of a try fest in that game, and both sides obviously are racking up the points, but Greenock just able to squeeze over the line by 1 point. So it gives them their first win. It means that they can start to build and try and get away from the bottom of the table, like say Ross High and Perthshire round about there as well. So but Murrayfield Wanderers certainly being able to score tries, 5 bonus points, try bonus points at least, is a good return. And from the games that they have lost, they've only just not picked up a losing bonus point in 1. So you think the swing of games, they could certainly, with a couple of victories, they could certainly be in the conversation at the top of the league. So there's still a lot of rugby to be played this season, so that tide could certainly turn in the next few games.
Plenty of points in National 4. Strathmore 40, White Craigs 34 was another one. Strathmore closing the gap on White Craigs to just 2 points now with that win. Both sides 4 from 6.
Yeah, another high scoring one, as you say, and obviously at the end White Craigs are able to squeeze the couple of points out of it, but Strathmore are able to keep touch at the top with a really important victory. You do think that it swings the other way, then you're having a slightly different conversation, but it's certainly been able to keep things interesting at the top. And yes, Garnock have a game in hand, so there potentially could be a little bit of a gulf between first and the rest of the chasing pack. But it was an important victory for Strathmore, because they'll be wanting to try and later on in the season pick up some points against the likes of Garnock to reel them back in.
So yes, as you say, Garnock 1 game in hand and still the only club out of the 50 to get all 5 bonus points with their wins. 25 points at the top, and White Craigs of course in second on 24, Strathmore third 22, Dunfermline fourth 20, North Berwick 5th 17, Murrayfield Wanderers 6th with 16, Stuart 7th with 13, and then 8th Perthshire 9 points, 9th Greenock Wanderers 9 points, and 10th Ross High 9 points.
Yeah, tight at the bottom again. At this stage of the season, you're always going to see that, because we've only played 6 games and you don't often see a lot of teams with no victories and no points. So there's points on offer. Some have picked up a victory. There's some losing and try bonuses in there as well. So in most of the leagues, it's pretty tight at the bottom. The only one that's probably the kind of anomaly in that is the Premiership. There's a bit of a gap between those, the bottom team and the rest of the pack. But yeah, certainly tight in this league as well. And you think the teams perhaps a couple of places above are certainly, we talk about Murrayfield Wands there, they could quite easily be dragged back into that, the kind of relegation conversation. But equally, a couple of wins, it's amazing what it changes in the complex and the kind of layout of the league table.
A couple of people have been mentioning about, what's the ups and downs for this year. Obviously, it was wholesale changes last season. Well, remember, the top 4 in the Premiership go through to the ridiculous playoffs. It's 1 down in the Premiership, 1 up, 1 down in Divisions 1, 2 and 3. And in Division 4, 3 will be relegated, replaced by the 3 teams who win the 3 regional leagues this season. And it's worth noting that, as it stands at the moment, Perthshire, Greenock Wanderers and Ross High are in the relegation positions, while in the top of the tables in the 3 regional leagues at the moment, we've got Panmure in Caledonia, Linlithgow in the east, and Ardrossan Accies in the west. And in the case of the Caledonia League, we could even see a second 15 get promoted to National 4, because Dundee second 15 are only 3 points behind Panmure, and I don't think that's ever happened before, to my knowledge.
Nah, I don't recall it, but obviously I'm about 40 years younger than you, Stuart, so it's not happened in my time. But Panmure, obviously, they were at the finals day at Murrayfield, playing on the Dam Health, at the time the Dam Health, but they were there, so obviously a team that are on the up and having a good couple of seasons, so they'll be wanting to try and see it through and make sure that we don't see a second team in National League. I think that would be strange. We'll have to kind of cross that bridge when it comes to it, but I wonder whether there's there's any scope that it would be the next team down, or if the second team do get promoted. I'm not too sure, but certainly I think it would be a strange one to see a second team in National Rugby. But ultimately you just want people playing rugby. You just want players out there competing at the level they're meant to be at. The only thing is it's quite volatile at second team rugby in most clubs, so the team that get promoted this year might not necessarily be the team that's going to be taking the field next year, whereas clubs like Panmure perhaps have a little bit more consistency.
Well, this week in National 4, it's Dunfermline against Strathmore, 4th against 3rd, 2 points in it, but Dunfermline with that game in hand.
Yeah, Dunfermline there just snuck in behind the kind of pack. There's the 4 teams there that we're perhaps talking in the terms of the conversation. You could even stretch that to North Berwick as well at the moment. They've got the game in hand as well. So, there's teams in there are really tight top of National 4 that are going to make things really competitive. But Dunfermline Strathmore is a big one in the race for promotion, because 3rd versus 4th, Dunfermline will be hoping to build a little bit of momentum, and then they can take advantage with that game in hand and put a bit of pressure on Garnock.
Garnock have Murrayfield Wanderers at home, 1st against 6th. Can Garnock make it 6 out of 6 with a try bonus and keep that record up? Murrayfield love to play open rugby, so that could be a high scoring affair, that one.
Yeah, Garnock are obviously still 100%, and they'll be tested this weekend against Murrayfield Wanderers, because obviously the games that we've had, Murrayfield Wanderers, all the games have been relatively close. So they've been there or thereabouts, and also Murrayfield Wanderers have scored tries. So if Murrayfield Wanderers get themselves in a position that they're leading and they get an opportunity to try and control the game, they might frustrate Garnock, and it might be something that they've perhaps not been too familiar with this season. But it's certainly a game that Garnock start as favourites.
Perthshire against Greenock Wanderers should be interesting. 8th against 9th. Perthshire with that game in hand and home comforts as well. But Greenock thrilled with last week's big result against Murrayfield.
Yeah, and that's, as I say, in any sport, it's amazing what a win does. It gives you that confidence, and you can then start to try and build a little bit of momentum. But Perthshire again will know what they need to do. Will be very aware of the situation that they find themselves in, and will be wanting to try and kind of stay clear of that relegation. So will Greenock. It's ridiculous to say that one team will be the only team wanting to stay away from relegation, but Perthshire do have a little bit of comfort, and the pressure's perhaps off them slightly because they've got that game in hand. But again, with League Rugby, you need points on the board. Both teams have 9 points, so it's an important fixture.
Ross High against White Craigs. Ross High in 10th spot at the moment. White Craigs in 2nd. Ross High are at home, but a big ask for them. Yeah,
it definitely is a big ask for them, especially when you look at the landscape of the league table. Ross High just propping everybody up, albeit on points difference, but White Craigs are pushing at the top. They're looking for promotion. They want to get out of National 4, so they'll look at this as an opportunity to get on the road, pick up 5 points, and then try and get back to their home paddock and re-galvanise for the next weekend's fixtures.
A Stuartry victory would take some pressure off them as they try to get away from that relegation zone. North Berwick with a game in hand, and a win for them could catapult them among the promotion challengers.
Yeah, we were just talking about that before, looking at the league table and those kind of 4 going on 5 clubs, and the going on 5 club is North Berwick. If they are able to get that victory this weekend, it does mean that they can start to be involved in that promotion race. But it's one of those fixtures. You don't pick up the victory. Do you start to limbo at mid-table and just kind of go through the motions and see the season through? So yes, it is early, but you're then relying on one team, and at the moment Garnock are that one team really slipping up. So it's a really vital fixture for North Berwick this weekend, that they can pick up a victory. But equally, Stuart will be trying to get away from that trapdoor at the bottom.
Well, plenty to talk about today, and I think that's probably our longest Scottish Club Rugby podcast. But that's it for this edition. Plenty to look forward to this weekend across all 5 divisions. A reminder that Rugby Radio on Saturday will come to you live from Riverside Park for the first time this season. Bottom versus top in the Premiership, Jed Forest versus Mar. There'll be television highlights of that on Borders Rugby TV, along with Hoyt Lundeen versus Hoyt Harlequins in East League 2, so look out for that. And don't forget to check out the website at rugbyradio.co.uk for all the information you need on the 50 clubs playing National Club Rugby across Scotland. Now, if you want to get in touch with us, it's podcast@bordersrugby.net. But from Dale Clancy and myself, bye for now.